Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. So the front line in Ukraine has calmed down. This is a very relative statement. That just means that there's fewer direct clashes that are going on at the moment than there were a couple of days ago. There have been reports that there are a lot fewer Ukrainian armored vehicles that have been destroyed at the front lines than there have been recently. There's a lot of debate over why this is true. Are the Ukrainians pulling their armored vehicles back to rearm, repair, regroup, etc., get ready for their own offensive that is coming up? Are they running out of armored vehicles, which they definitely are? They are absolutely running out of armored vehicles and also artillery systems. Now, while this is going on, the thing to pay attention to is that what Russia strikes, artillery strikes, and aerial strikes have been focusing on, and there are lots of reports coming back from, is that they have been striking ammo depots, fuel depots, supply depots, artillery systems, radar systems, missile, long-range missile batteries, etc. And I'm talking about by the dozens per day that they have been knocking out. This says one thing to me, that, and you can look back at how the special military operation began. How did it begin? It began with aerial strikes on military targets. And this is a logical method to waging warfare. You knock out your supply systems, your support systems, etc. Even if you've got all of these vehicles and forces at the front line, if you've knocked out the supply lines, then you've already defeated that military. There's no place, if you have these tanks and armored vehicles up at the front line and they run out of fuel and there's no place for them to go back and refuel and rearm, they're sitting ducks. They're targets. That's all they are. Yesterday, I think, was the first day that the Stryker vehicles actually crossed the border from Poland into Ukraine. People keep on talking about, the Strykers and the Bradleys as, armored vehicles. Well, yeah, they are technically armored. But I want you to take a look at what these things look like. All right, so this is a Stryker. You take a look at this. How much armor does this thing actually carry? It is not like a tank. A tank has tons and tons more weight to it because of just the pure steel, the hardened steel, which comprises the armor. Do you see a turret or a tank on this? Now you can mount a gun on this, but it's not going to be a main cannon. It's going to be just, you might be able to mount a tow missile, a mortar, or something like that. But there's even a lot of question as to how much of that is going to be included with these vehicles. And these are wheeled vehicles. They do not have the mobility of a tracked vehicle. They don't. Yeah, you get them stuck, mired in mud, and they're just stuck. That's all there is. They carry a lot more personnel. That's because they don't carry the shells, the weapons that a tank carries. So let's go to the Bradley. All right, so yeah, this has got a turret, but look at the size of that gun on this thing. They call this a tank killer. And that's if you have like a tow missile, an anti-tank weapon on there, which that gun is not an anti-tank weapon. That is just a gun for suppressing fire. That's all that is. And again, each Bradley, a Stryker, they can carry like 8 to 10 infantry personnel. That's what they are. They are transport vehicles to the front and hearses to the rear. That's what they are. Yeah, it's a tracked vehicle. It has more mobility, but how much armor do you think this has got? The very front hatch that you're looking at, right behind that hatch, that's the engine. I used to work on these things. I was trained to work on these. Right behind that hatch is the engine. You take that out, it's dead. That's it. And that armor isn't worth anything. When these things first came out, there was a big controversy about it that said that the Bradley armor could be pierced by an M16 at close range. That's not much of an armor, and the U.S. is not including the reactive armor that mounts on top of the resident armor for these vehicles. So this is it. That's what they're getting, period. Yeah, you can mount other things on top of it, but it's still a target. Some people think, now, none of the tanks, the Leopards or Challengers, have made it into Ukraine as yet, and they're not expected to be there until at least late March or early April, something like that. Even when they get there, Russia has said, I forgot who it was in Russia, but said that these tanks and so forth can meet with a response which is not armored. And a lot of people say, oh, that means they're going to use nuclear weapons. No, it doesn't. Modern tank warfare is not the way that you see in old World War II movies. It's not tank against tank across the battlefield. This is coordinated. Tanks are more likely to be taken out by drones, artillery, long-range missiles, etc. It's not going to be tank against tank, like in some World War II movie. That's not the way it happens. So that's what they were referring to. They have other means of taking these things out, so that don't require armor. Now, there's talk about the United States sending longer range missiles, what we've sent, I think, I forget how many kilometers, but now they're sending weapons that will reach 150 kilometers. Well, Russia is preparing for an offensive right now. It's very clear they've knocked out the supply lines. They've been pushing in different areas and, encircling Bakhmut, and they're working on encircling several other areas, Ugledar, and I forget where else. But so, and some areas, once they close those cauldrons, they are encircling tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. And Ukraine is actually evacuating some of these areas as we speak. Right now, they are pulling their forces back. Some people say in preparation for an offensive. An offensive for what? For what are they going to, enact an offensive on? When they're already losing all this territory, they've lost tens of thousands of soldiers in these areas. They're running out of equipment, armor, personnel. They're forcibly conscripting people on the streets. So the timing on this is everything, as evidenced by the beginning of the military special operation, the Special Military Operation, SMO. I'm just going to call it the SMO. The first thing they did was knock out military targets, and then the ground. It was 2 or 3 days later that the ground offensive invasion began. Well, there's no reason to think otherwise. Russia is currently knocking out supply lines, ammo depots, fuel depots, supply depots, and all this kind of thing, and they are taking control over supply roads, at least fire control over supply routes into Bakhmut and wherever. So they are getting ready, and I expect a major Russian offensive within the next few days, because they're not going to knock out all of these supply lines and depots and then wait for those things to be resupplied. They're going to move forward. Some sources are saying that they're going to try and take, tens of thousands of square kilometers basically all at once, and that's not what they're going to do. They're going to continue as they have been doing, keep pushing the front lines forward, forming smaller cauldrons, encircling Ukrainian troops. But they give the, the Ukrainian troops have the chance to retreat, but Ukraine doesn't do that very often. They are in this case, but slowly, not quickly enough. So yes, Russia is going to push forward. I do expect to hear of a major forward offensive within the next few days. Now, we all know about the 300,000 that were mobilized. That number does not include the Wagner forces, which we have no idea how big the Wagner forces are, but we do know that they are extremely effective. Like it or not, you can hate them all you want, but you have to admit that they are extremely effective in what they do. Douglas McGregor estimates there are 650 to 700,000 Russian forces in Donbass at this time. So that's considerably more than 300,000. Now, not all of those are frontline combat troops. Most of those are support troops, logistics, supply, repair, mechanics, food, etc. But the greater your number is, the greater the number of frontline troops and the more effective that this is going to become. I expect a big movement within the next few days. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, because all of the information that comes back is pretty much delayed because mostly because they're on the other side of the planet. You know, it's nighttime there as I'm recording this now. Now, there is also some discussion about whether Western countries are going to send F-16s to Ukraine. And that's a distinct possibility, especially with the fact that the U.S. is now telling Turkey that they're going to go, that we're going to go back on the deal to sell them F-16s. All of a sudden, right now, this is happening, unless Turkey approves for Sweden to become part of NATO, and Turkey is not backing down on this. To join NATO requires a unanimous decision from all NATO members, and Turkey is not backing down on their stance. The United States already backed out of selling Turkey F-35s and then reached the F-16 agreement because Turkey was buying S-300s from Russia several years ago, like 2018, I think. So if they're going to not sell those F-16s to Turkey, then they're preparing to send F-16s to Ukraine. But Ukraine had a significant air force before this began. Their airports are demolished. There's no place for them to land and take off from unless they go to NATO countries. Now, I don't think Russia is going to hit targets within a NATO country, but these F-16s can be taken down by drones, anti-aircraft, or Russian aircraft. So the Ukrainians don't know how to fly an F-16. It takes a long time. The aircraft they had before were old Soviet MiGs. There's a big difference between an F-16 and a MiG. It takes months of training to learn how to fly an F-16 as opposed to a MiG. Months. So it's not to, even if they deliver them today, it's going to be months before they're useful. So unless they are being flown by NATO troops, which I also consider a distinct possibility, then there's this is highly in question. So the more Russia pushes back the front line, the longer range weapons, 150 kilometers, they won't be able to reach into Russian territory as effectively. Ukraine will have to keep backing up to even hit the targets on the front line. They'll have to keep on retreating and keep retreating, etc. I'm still hoping this is coming to an end very soon. The M1s won't be there until probably next year. It's highly questionable when other things are going to be there. They're trickling in slowly, which doesn't do any good. And the more you destroy the supply lines, you're rendering them impotent. They're just not going to do any good if they don't have a supply line, a support line. Can they even be repaired if they sustain damage? Do people know how, do the Ukrainians know how to drive these things, operate these things, repair these things? These are big questions. The strikers have just gotten there. How much training has there been on operating them? So, I'm going to reiterate again and again and again and again. There needs to be a peace process. There needs to be a diplomatic, peaceful negotiation to end this. That should have happened many times. It could have happened at any point. Ukraine could have gone with the peace agreements that were made in March of last year. They could have honored the Minsk agreements from 2014, 2015. There have been so many chances for a peaceful negotiation. Hopefully, this is going to get to that point. The entire culture, the entire country is being destroyed. They are going to be in debt for decades. Their economy is destroyed. I'm not in favor of any of this. I never wanted any of this. I've been watching what's been going on over there since 2014. I didn't just suddenly become aware of this in February of last year, like most Americans who can't point to Ukraine on a map. If you're not in favor of peace negotiations, then you are in favor of warfare. You are in favor of more people dying. You are in favor of more Russians dying. You are in favor of more Ukrainians dying. And by all reports, for every one Russian that dies in this battle, in this war, and I'm calling it a war, for every one Russian, 8 to 10 Ukrainians are being killed or at least permanently disabled. I don't want any of that. I don't want to see their entire culture destroyed. I don't want to see their economy and their people demolished. I don't want it. I am in favor of a peaceful negotiation, but I always have been. So let's hope that this is going to wind up with a peace negotiation. Hopefully, Ukraine will get the message before this next offensive begins. But don't count on it. All right, share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.